What is up, you guys? Hope you're doing well. We're here for our weekly energy oracle forecast, where we will be just looking at the next 7 or so days ahead to see what the energy is going to be like. Before we get into our official weekly reading, I will say that the cards that I got for I do my own weekly reading for myself personally on Sunday mornings. And the Oracle of Oddities is one of the decks that I use in my personal reading. And it's the first set of cards that I lay out, and everything else comes underneath them. And my cards were anxiety, death, third eye chakra, and security. And the rest of the cards in the spread talked about acting in faith, knowing that the means will be provided, finding that sense of joy and levity, because that is where our power is. But where the enemy wants to get in and throw us off and make us reactive and is fill us with fear and anxiety. And we really have to take hold of our mental landscape, of our consciousness, of our thoughts. We have to be sovereign over our mind, or else all of this noise is going to get in and just completely distract us, completely rob us of our peace, of our happiness, of our life, of our direction. And so it's important that we learn how to cut ourselves off from the noise and be able to find that stillness and that quiet within. And when you're having your strong moments of clarity, then you offer that to another. Because when you're having your hard moments, they'll have that strength to give to you and help you gain perspective and help you get through it. There was a really great podcast I listened to today that was very helpful. I'm a big fan of the Robcast. Rob Bell is a spiritual Christian writer, former pastor, but he's a writer and a speaker and a creative in general. And his podcasts from this week, which it's third week of January. I forget what's the date today. It's January 26th. So the one that he released for this week is called What We Do, or The Talk We Need to Have 2025, or something like that. And the main point was that we've got to watch the doom scrolling. We've got to be really careful. We've got to clean up our clicks so that we tell the algorithm what we want by the way that we respond to the content that we're seeing. If we interact with it, if we click on it, even if we just click on it, give it attention, then it's going to start, it's going to give us more and more and more and more and more. And then it snowballs and it just becomes crazy. In 2012, I came to the edge of my sanity, honestly, because it was like the Mayan calendar was ending, and then there was all these like environmental threats and like the power grid, the fragility of it all. And it was just like there was so many things going on, so many like conspiracies coming into like people's like the forefront of the consciousness, and it was just like all coming at us from every angle on every channel, and then some. So it was just like I finally just had to accept that, like, me watching it and getting so worked up is not going to do anything. I have to learn to take the facts that I can perceive and leave the rest, and then educate myself and do further research. And this is what Rob Bell's podcast was about. It was like, okay, you need to be informed, but you don't have to be watching all of it all the time, and you can be intentional about how you go in, how much time you spend, or leave it up to, like, for instance, I think that we should be paying attention right now, but I think we can give ourselves limits and practice restriction and be mindful of the echo chamber that you can get into, and how the search engine will basically just tell you what you want to hear and give you what you want. It kind of like is biased. So we have to be really logical and methodical in how we educate ourselves on, things that are happening around us, and how we get that information, because it's all heightened and extreme and from every angle. So it's just like, so we need to kind of be able to start learning how to filter that. But it was just really like a good reminder. It's just like when you feel tempted to just start getting caught and clicking and taking it all in, it's just like you've got to pull back, and we've got to be able to tune into our heart and our spirit and be able to hear that, and be, stay connected to what truly matters to us and our values. And we can't let the darkness win, and the opponent, the Satan, is always trying to thwart our light and snuff it out. And it was so interesting that, like, the reading was just like, hey, I know that you are anxious and scared, but that's going to be the thing that dwindles the light within you. And you have to find that child, that inner child within, and try to soothe and re-regulate that inner child that is frightened. But you can't let that inner child take control. But what you need to do is nourish that inner child with the things that bring that inner child fulfillment and joy and peace. The artists, we need that beauty right now. We need comedy right now. We need wisdom that is, gentle and loving. And we need to be unified, even if we don't agree with one another. And it's so easy to feel defensive when we're on edge like this. And what that does is it heightens your response and your reactiveness. And we just kind of need to watch that and try extra hard to be open to having gentle conversations, and making an effort, I guess, not to take things hard or offensively, and try to be open and listening and curious. Like, when people feel defensive, they start fighting one another, and so I think that if we can find gentleness and kindness. And it's interesting, what I've noticed from my last couple of shifts at work, feels like there's this extra gentleness, and I don't know, this feeling of like something coming from everyone right now that's just, I don't know, it's just subtle, but there's something there. It's just like people are just trying extra hard to be kind and careful and considerate and mindful, which I think is very interesting. So, having said that, we have knowledge and we have imagination. I think that this is Pandora's box, honestly, and this is what we're talking about here, because where knowledge is power, in a way, knowledge, like, the more we know, the more our minds can run wild, right? And we can, our imaginations can run away with us. And that's why it's important that, particularly for someone like me who has intuitive visions and prophetic visions that sometimes like literally play out. And it's crazy because it kind of fucks with you, because you're like, okay, well, is this my imagination this time? Or is this, is this a prophecy? Like, it can be really fucky and, really mess with you. And so I think that what we have to do now is don't shut our eyes, be responsible, look, keep our eyes open, keep our hearts open too. And also fill our minds and fill our hearts and fill our spirits with things that nurture our soul right now. Putting your mind to studying something that fills your mind with positivity and good things. Maybe it's learning more about ancient history, right?Maybe you're looking into learning new languages or learning how to cook different ethnic cuisines, right? Maybe you are finding a deeper appreciation for learning your religious book, whatever that is for you, and like learning those teachings and learning those readings. And those that literature, whatever it is right now, I think that what we do need to do is curate what we are feeding ourselves with, because the dragon that we feed is the dragon that will grow. So we have imagination and we have knowledge. Now, there are many global problems going on right now, global threats in the world. And we need to be using our ingenuity to solve the problems. We need to be, because look at this. It's got the whole world in his hands. But this is we have to take hold and take responsibility of our responsibility and stewardship for mankind and this planet. And so, so many people out there are so bright and imaginative and intelligent, and they can create amazing things, to solve issues of pollution and hunger and, health crisis and all kinds of things. But people's imaginations can also come up with things that can be instantly used in ways that work against us. It's so, it's a mixed bag. And so it's up to us to choose beauty and creation and share that consciousness with the Creator. There's it's so great, learning about, in Kabbalah, there's these different classifications of consciousness in different types. And we want to share affinity with the light of the Creator by being in a consciousness that is like God, that is like the Creator. And so it's okay, well, are we in Creator consciousness or Destroyer consciousness? If we're in Creator consciousness, we're in affinity with the light of the Creator, but Destroyer consciousness is not in affinity with the light of the Creator. Are we in sharing consciousness or taking consciousness? Because the light, the Creator, is always emanating, always giving forth, always eternal. And so much so that it needed something to give to. And so it created the vessel to contain us, the vessel within the vessel within the vessel, to receive that light. So, there's different classifications, I guess you could say, or dualities of consciousness that we kind of oscillate, back and forth. And it's this is where we check ourselves. Okay, am I using my imagination in a way that's in alignment with the wondrous goodness of God, or am I slipping into fear and selfishness, lack and darkness and doubt? So I think that, the tree of knowledge of good and evil gave us, a conundrum, because it was all paradise when we were blissfully ignorant of the darkness of evil. And we didn't have to have pain or suffering or death. It was all just perfect. And now we know, and now there's pain and death, suffering in the world. And so we have to correct our consciousness and our soul and our minds so that we can reconnect with the garden again. So really, being conscious and precious with your mind and with your knowledge and with your imagination. Because remember, guys, this is the new timeline, and we have to choose the life that we are creating for ourselves and the story that we're writing and the consciousness that we're in. And there are certain things that we can't control, and we can't control most things. The only thing we get to really control, though, is how we perceive what is being presented to us, and how the consciousness that we have, consciousness that we choose to have, and how we respond, how we show up in the moment. Wow, we've had the freaking sacral chakra coming up so much. And so this is related to that, the Sphirot of Yesod on the Tree of Life. This is the next dimension up from the dimension of the material world that we live in, the 3D. And so here is the storehouse of all that we are given. Just like this is like the womb of the female where we give birth to life, in the cosmic sense of the map of reality, this would be the dimension that all blessing, all abundance, all sustenance flows forth through. This would also be the gate of life and death through which souls pass, coming and going. This is where our dream state is. This is where the Garden of Eden was. This is where we hold our shame and our guilt. This is our creative energy right there, right in this area. Like it's in the the reproductive zone. So this is our creative energy, both in our imagination and in our physical creative energy. But this is also that psychic instinct too, of that gut instinct, right? And so, the more shame we hold here, the more it blocks our creativity. It gathers here, and we hold it in our gut. We can hold unforgiveness there and fear, and that can really just block everything. So pay attention. Let go of shame, let go of guilt, which would also mean letting go of judgment, because that's connected to shame as well. Oh, nightmares. I had a feeling this would come up. So again, we are, our imagination can run wild. We might be kind of plagued with nightmares, or feel like we're facing our nightmares this week, or living in a nightmare. I know growing up, I always had these reoccurring dreams, and they were futuristic. And it was like I was here in Tennessee, but it was the sky was red and glowing, and that dark, ominous, cloudy, stormy night sky. And it's always I'm just trying to drive to go get my family, and I'm trying to gather everybody up, and I'm trying to get them to safety, and nobody listens to me. Nobody will pay attention to what I'm saying. And I don't know, it's this weird sense that I'm this Sarah Connor's character, from Terminator. And in the dream, it was I knew it was Nashville, but everything looked different. It was all of these buildings and bridges and roads in different spots. I didn't recognize the city. It was weird. And now this is what the city looks like. So, I mean, it's just, I feel like my nightmares are coming true. And in the nightmares, it was there was jets and things, all kinds of stuff going on. right now, everything that we're seeing in the media and like just all kinds of different issues from all over the world, it's just like the aliens are the least of my worries right now. I'm almost comforted by them. Oh, yeah. So again, it's like we can't be taken over by our nightmares. I mean, we just can't, it's like a parasite. It's like a demonic parasite that wants to take over. And that's how this is the battle of light and dark, where we have to do everything we can to connect with a spiritual source of strength and courage and truth for ourselves. And for me, it's definitely connecting with Jesus, the Christ, and having that relationship with the Holy Spirit where I can connect in prayer and feel like I'm heard. And I feel like my prayers are answered many times. And if I didn't have that right now and throughout my life, honestly, I don't know what I would do or where I would be. And I think that, I haven't had a perfect example of my experience through church, so I always just sort of like found it on my own. And I feel so fortunate and grateful that I wasn't a person that shunned it off completely. But I do feel that I'm put here for those people. That's why I am a person who's a Judeo-Christian, but I'm still like doing tarot. And like I'm here like able to like talk to people in a different way and reach them without the triggering feeling that turned them away from the church in the first place. So I don't ever want to be, pushing or dogmatic, but like for me, this is just, I'm a complete believer. I used to see angels and demons as a young child. So for me, I've never had to question about whether or not things were real. And on top of that, I could separate the disappointment I felt through maybe leaders of the church and church leadership and how things went there, where I could separate human flaw from Jesus and Jesus's message. And so, I don't know, I think more people are starting to come around to that now. And then expand. So, when society gets too stable and when we get too stable as people, the universe, God, the cosmos, has to stir and shake things up and put pressure and show all of what has been festering, to bring it out. And so in those times of pressure and upheaval and chaos and disruption, that is when we have the most growth, the most expansion. And so moving through times like these, when everything is so extreme, whether it's just weather or Mountain Dew, it's just intense everywhere. It's this pressure that's actually going to create that great awakening and that movement of mankind into a new era. And it's not going to come without pressure and without uncertainty, because this is how we stretch and strengthen our faith, and we build that certainty and we choose that certainty. But it can feel like a nightmare. But on some level, this is the dream. This incarnation, it's like we are all in this virtual reality game, almost almost like a game, right? But it's not. But it is. But it's not. And we're here and we're like, oh my God, like, this is it. But it's not it. It's just like, this is the virtual reality, but it's virtual reality. But the real reality is like the eternal soul and consciousness that we take with us through these different realities, these different versions of realities, different helmets we put on. So, look, it's almost like even like a helmet of snakes, like nightmares, right? Just think about that. When things get too tough and when things get so scary, just think about the fact that we can take this virtual reality helmet off. And underneath that, we're in our soul and in our spirit that's going to be one with God and in the kingdom of heaven with the angels, with Jesus, and with whatever is going on in that realm. We're conscious, we interrelate in that realm before we come here, because we all decide like these parts that we're going to play with each other, right? So we don't get to decide necessarily what's going on in the simulation of the helmet that we've got on right now. But we can decide how we navigate through the levels and try to fill your imagination, try to fill your mind, try to fill your heart, try to fill your spirit with good things. Right? And try to practice maintaining your awareness. When you start drifting off into bad places, if you're not going to make use of that and do something with it, then change the channel. Do something positive. Do something that is an act of love or an act of faith or an act of sharing or an act of creativity, right? An act of taking in spiritual nourishment or sharing it with someone else. But, unless you're being constructive and productive, like anxiety itself is not productive, and it can actually make you sick, and it thwarts you, and it makes you depressed, and it makes you feel like despair and futility. And you know what? Our sparks of light cannot be lost unless we fall into despair. That's when we lose all the points in the game and we just spill it out, all our power, and we have to build it all up again. So whatever you do, maintain a daily practice of connecting to something that builds your sense of courage and strength and faith and certainty and inner peace and inner fulfillment, and do things that feed your soul and your spirit and your creativity and your joy and your happiness, because that's what we need to do to maintain our spirit and our humanity. And when you listen to old people who have been through all kinds of nightmares throughout history and throughout their life and throughout their generations, they always say, life is short, enjoy. Don't let anything steal the beauty of the life that we have while we're here. So yeah, you guys, imagination, knowledge, sacral chakra, nightmare, and expand. This is expanding our hearts and our compassion and our minds and our consciousness. And you know what? Expansion feels like you're getting torn in two directions and torn to pieces sometimes. But new life is going to come from this and from us. So my prayer is for love and unity. And last thought, it's like there's like even like people commenting like on my videos, it's like usually I just ignore like saucy comments and don't say anything. But then sometimes I'm like, well, maybe this is like a moment for a discussion or like a conversation. Maybe I don't know where they're coming from. I can always tell when people are just showing up being like, you shouldn't be talking about that. And I'm just like, whatever. But sometimes when people are actually trying to have a conversation, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe sometimes it's hard to understand people because you don't know what their tone is. And sometimes they're not necessarily like, English might not be their first language. And so sometimes it's hard for me to understand like what people are getting at and like what they're trying to say and like how I can engage with them in their conversation. So I'm literally like in this like commenting with someone right now, like as we like this evening. But I was trying, because it was about one of the secret teachings of Jesus thing, and they were like, I don't know, trying to ask me something about the Son of Man, but like the way that they were putting their I didn't know quite what they're getting at, but I honestly, like, sincerely just didn't want to like brush the person off or like get totally offended or worked up or silence their comment, or like be a tyrant in that way, just like, I don't know. And I don't want to like upset them because we're talking about Jesus. So I'm just like, I'm just trying to handle it delicately. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know exactly what we're talking about here, but okay. So I'm trying, sometimes, but I just had to say that because I don't know. You do what you can, I guess. But yeah, if you're that person that I'm in a conversation with right now, I'm sorry. I'm just not quite sure what you've been getting at, but I know what your tone is, but I wish you the best. Thank you. Thanks for commenting it. Hopefully it'll get the video some traction. All right, you guys, much love to you. Much love to all of us, and peace and unity and caring and sharing, and wishing you the best. Until tomorrow. Ciao.